Jim.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the invite. He said barbershop stories, so I'm going to go back, and as near as I can figure, I began my singing career in the 7th grade at a Catholic grade school singing Kyrie eleison with the choir. And then I moved on from there to the Boy Scouts and sang Alouette, Gentil Alouette around the campfire. You all remember that from Boy Scouts? I moved up from there to the piano bars around southwest Minneapolis, St. Louis Park, Al's and Bunnies and all the rest of them. For any of you who might remember that era. A keg of beer or two occasionally down at Carleton College when I went down there to meet some friends, and we went out to what was known as the Arb and roll a keg of beer out there, and that's where my harmonizing started to come in. Gee, this sounds like fun. Well, anyway, my wife encouraged me to join the church choir out in Richfield, and I did, and started singing the Lord's praises. And there, a couple of guys encouraged me to come and join the Knights of Columbus male chorus, which I did. And I sang with them about 4 or 5 years. And then my good friend from grade school, John Chenard, who Spong brought into the Commodores in 1968, encouraged me in 1969 to go with him over to the Land O'Lakes District Convention in Oshkosh. So I did, and I was totally hooked. I stayed up all night singing tags. I just could not get enough of it. And came back, and the next Tuesday night joined the Commodores. Well, I had to stay there for 3 nights, or 3 Tuesday nights. But anyway, joined the Commodores in 1969, fall of '69, and Harold Ulring was directing the chorus at that time. Then in 1970, I was asked to form a quartet, and we called ourselves the Four Knots. And that was Will Sheldon, Sandy Forsyth, Marv Spears singing tenor, and myself as bass. And we sang about 5-6 months. And then I went to my first international convention in the summer of 1970, and I believe that Bob Spong directed the chorus that time. We went to Atlantic City. It was my first of many, many consecutive international conventions. In 1970, spring of 1970 or 71, Norm DiCarlo, who was then singing bass with the Red Barons, had to move over to Wisconsin, so the other 3 guys asked me to join the Red Barons. So we went on to win the district, and then win the division, and then went to district in that fall and won the district in 1971. Let me see. The Barons disbanded in fall of 1972, and about the same time, the Hut 4 disbanded, and the Gemini Crickets from Rochester disbanded. So Rod Johnson moved to Minneapolis and contacted Bob Spong, and somehow they got a hold of Bob Dama, who was still singing with the Night Howls, and they heard that the Red Barons had just disbanded, so they auditioned me. And I'll never forget the evening over at Spong's house. The first song we sang was, "After all is said and done, there is really only one, Margie, Margie, it's you." And when we got to that one chord, it was electrifying. And from that time on, we just figured, well, we got something here. So we formed a quartet, and it was Dick Playstad who came up with the name of the Happiness Emporium. And so we adopted that name, and let's see, here's some of the things that we did. We formed in '71, won the division contest, went on to sing in the international contest that year. I think it was in Portland, placed 26th. Went on to the fall convention at the district and won the district then in '73. In '74, we placed 9th at Kansas City. And then in '75, we won the big one in Indianapolis. Some of the coaches that we had were Richard Dick, was our first coach. Our second coach was Mac Huff, who was then an employee of the Barbershop Harmony Society, or SPEBSQSA, Doc.
Thank you for that.
Okay, and our last and final coach was Don Claus, who had coached the 1970, excuse me, 1973 Dealer's Choice, 74 the Regents, 75 us, 76 the Insiders. 77 he didn't, and then 78 was the kids, the Bluegrass Student Union, right. So he was quite a coach of renown. Some of the history of the Happiness Emporium, as near as I can figure out, we sang in 42 states and 6 Canadian provinces. We sang over 400 barbershop chapter shows and over 500 non-barbershop shows. We toured 18 countries, didn't sing in all of them, but actually toured in countries because we were on tours and different things. Then let's see. Mr. Spong left after 10 years, and when Dick Treptow came in as our baritone, sang with us for 4 years, and then he left to go back to Indianapolis, and then Rick Anderson came in, and he has been our baritone for over 30 years. We made recordings, 7 barbershop type a cappella recordings, 4 gospel recordings, a DVD, and 1 for the society where we had one side and the, excuse me, I gotta have some water here. Let's click off. The, what was I gonna say? Well, let me take my water.
You're talking about gospel recordings.
Well, the society was one where we did a Irving Berlin album, and the Insiders had one side of 6 songs, and we had the other side of 6 songs. That was a fun one put together also. Then let's see, the Happiness Emporium officially retired about 3 years ago, and during all of that time, I sang with some other quartets also. We had the River City School Board, which was my friend John Chenard and Doug Chapman, and let's see, Chapman, Chenard, myself as bass. I'm missing a guy there. Larry Avery. Larry Avery was the tenor, and we sang in 8 shows of Music Man. And then we continued to sing for a while. Avery dropped out, or was it Dama was the tenor in the Music Man play, and then he dropped out, and Larry Avery came in as our tenor for a while. And we sang for a couple, 3 years. I sang also with a mixed quartet called Seventh Heaven, where it was Dama, Jeannie Spong, Lynn Quam, and myself singing bass. We sang for 10 years as a mixed quartet. Our claim to fame was that we competed in the very first mixed quartet contest out in Aspen, Colorado, and amazingly came in as silver medalists in the contest.
How many quartets were there?
Well, it was only 2 quartets. That's all right. You can be my straight man here. So I was just listing all the quartets after Steve said he had sung in 15. So I sang with the 4 Knots, then the Red Barons, then the Happiness Emporium. Then the Good News Quartet was made up of 4 international champions from 4 different quartet years. Dale Deiser was from the Mark IV 69. Jerry Fairchild was a Sidewinders 1964. Joe Mazzone was in the Regents 1974. And originally Mo Rector was the bass. And then they sent him on his way and asked me to sing. So I sang with the Good News for about 15 years as their bass. It was fun because we came from 4 different parts of the country. Joe lived in Florida, Jerry lived in California, I lived up here in Minnesota, and Dale Deiser was in San Antonio, Texas. So the four of us would fly to San Antonio and have rehearsals there, and then we made several recordings too, of good news recordings out in California. Other quartets were the Stage Door Four with Jay Fall singing lead in another presentation of Music Man, and with Ashland Productions over in Maplewood. I sang with Gary Jacobson in the Grand Slam Quartet, and we sang the national anthem at the Twins game a couple times. I sang in several Valentine's quartets, and currently now I'm singing in the River City Quartet with my old guy who got me into barbershopping, John Chenard, and I've known him since grade school, since third grade. So here the two of us are now singing. We've known each other over 70 years, and we've been together about 3 years, and still singing quite a bit. We sang a lot of church services this summer and are continuing to get occasional gigs. I think I've covered everything, except I want to tell you about one really funny thing that happened. The Happiness Emporium used to travel in uniforms. We had a traveling uniform. We would go to and from the chapter show in uniform. And we had sung the show right near Pittsburgh. And on Sunday morning, we were standing in the airport, at the Pittsburgh airport, and at that time we were carrying our own sound equipment. So we had 8 pieces of sound equipment and 4 extra bags. So there was 12 bags lying, you might say, lined up here on the curb. And we were dressed in dark blue raincoats and gray slacks. And we were standing here very comfortably with our hands in our pocket, watching the red cap walk by the bags, putting a tag on each bag. And just about, he gets about halfway down, and Don was standing here, and he lets the most murky, loudest, longest fluff that you've ever heard. The 4 of us are just standing here, and this red cap, without even missing a beat, sound like that man needs some warm, soapy water.
I remember it perfectly.
And of course, the other 3 of us just walked away from Dama, and he stood there, very embarrassed, but it was a very, very funny experience. So that's my barbershop story. Any questions?